Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Popcorn Perspective Podcast Edition. We are back with David, Jeremy, and myself. Welcome back, boys. How are you doing?
I'm
Doing
great,
good.
thank you. I'm great, thank you very much. Just chilling, enjoying the films as they come out this season. Usual
Yeah,
stuff.
Same.
right. Yeah, it's an interesting time for movies. Not that many coming out, but there's some interesting ones, especially on the way, I would say.
How you
But
doing, James?
yeah,
Same
yeah.
as
Oh,
us.
yeah. By the way, yes, I am very good. I haven't watched that many things, but I try to watch the most important things at least. So this episode is going to be Marvel heavy. So if you're not into Marvel, you might want to skip to the end because we're going to talk about Black Widow, Loki, Disney Plus show, and A Quiet Place 2, one of the latest horrors to like very popular movie. Yeah, so that's the order in which we're going to talk about them as well. So you can pick and choose and skip through the video if you want to jump a topic. There will be some spoilers. Okay, so we will do our best to say, okay, we're going to dive deep into spoilers before we do that, but we might not. So just be warned. Yeah, and I think we'll just dive right into the topics, boys,
Hmm.
if that's
Sounds
okay with
good to
you.
me, fam. Yep,
Right.
sounds good to
Okay.
me.
Okay, fam. So I think we'll kick it off with Black Widow, the latest Marvel feature film entry. I think who wants to kick it off?
I think I can start.
Right. Go ahead.
Okay, so we're getting right. Shall I just cut right to opinions on what I thought of it,
I
or
mean,
there's no
we can
introduction?
start with a bit of an overview of the movie, just if for people that don't know
Sure.
much about it.
Okay, so quick rundown. If you're new to Marvel, this is for you. If you're familiar with it, you'll know this already. Black Widow is the latest in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, beginning of Phase 4. It's I think the 24th film, and it's their first interquel as well. Um,
Explain that word for the
Kind of
less
like set in the
initiated.
middle. It's interquel would be sort of like set in the middle of
Right.
some other films
I
instead
have
of
a,
right before.
I have a synonym for that, but I won't say it.
Say
It's
what?
disposable. Anyway.
Okay. We're
Yeah.
getting to that. We're
Yeah.
getting to
Right.
that.
Keep
Yeah.
going.
So yeah, this is a Black Widow solo outing that gives Natasha Romanoff, first introduced in Iron Man 2, her first her first first film centered on herself instead of just being a supporting character to everybody else. And my opinion of the movie is that is can be summarized as too little, too late. Um, I mean, had this movie come out about 5 years earlier, it would have been completely unchanged. I'd be a bit more forgiving of it, but I don't know. It feels like a bit of I wouldn't even say a letdown. It's more like an afterthought or kind of like going out with a whimper. Um, So I think my biggest gripe with the movie is that it's not really about Natasha. There's more set up for her successor, Elena. Elena,
Mm-hmm.
am I saying her name right? Elena Belova, played by
Right.
Florence Pugh from Midsommar and Little Women. And I don't know. It's the characterization go is good for most of the supporting characters, at least the ones who aren't villains, like Red Guardian, played by David Harbour, is all right as well. But when it comes to the story itself, there are a few. I don't know. There are a few bits which just don't make sense or seem a little bit far fetched. And another gripe I have with this movie is that even though it's a spy action film, so it's a low power film, where it's set in the same universe where you have godlike beings and aliens and magic is real, but it's more grounded this time, a la Winter Soldier. And yet the action doesn't quite hit. I mean, it does at the beginning. We have some decently choreographed fights at the beginning, but then towards the end, it becomes a bit too reliant on CGI. And then sometimes when fights are about to get really good, it cuts to something else. The villain, not Again, if you're familiar with Marvel, the villain is I wouldn't even call them disappointing. There needs to be something else because disappointing is too kind to call the villain. You just have to
Terrible.
call. It's just I don't know what to call it. And the main and Taskmaster appears as an antagonist in this film. And although Taskmaster is not the main antagonist, I don't think that enough justice is. They're an even bigger letdown than that villain, in my opinion. I know you don't have to adapt things 100%, but I don't know. I wanted to see more of them. There was something. There were some good moments, but I really wanted to see more. I think the problem, this film just, like I said, it's just to retread what I was saying before. It's a little bit too little, too late. There are some exciting bits, and it starts off really well. I forgot to mention that at the beginning, like the opening of Black Widow. The first few minutes, really good. I was engaged, and then it just kind of loses itself. It just kind of
Right.
loses itself, especially towards the end. It just gets more. It starts off at a peak, and then it just gradually just declines. In how I just felt myself feeling less and less engaged in this movie. Um, I don't know what else to say really. That's pretty much it. Had it come out sooner, I would be more forgiving of it.
Right.
I feel like we're not doing justice to Natasha, considering what happens to her in Avengers Endgame. It's just the order of everything really feels off. This doesn't feel like a surgically planned, like business strategy type Marvel movie. In that case, it doesn't really. I don't really think it adds much to the MCU.
Right.
I mean, what are your guys' takes on it?
Uh,
Maybe you'll remind me
shall I go,
something.
or you want to go, Jerry? Jerry,
I'll give it a shot.
go ahead.
Or what do you think, Jer?
Okay, so if I have to start from the very beginning, tell me if you heard this before. If you heard this plot, the Black Widow and a group of other heroes have to basically stop a secret organization on top of the flying fortress with a Terminator-like character chasing after them. Did I describe to you another film? I did.
I can
The
probably think of a bunch of movies similar to
but
that, but tell me what
specifically
you're
involving.
thinking. Um,
Basically, I'm
I don't
just
know.
describing the plot of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. It's
Yeah. Okay.
it's
Yeah, I know what you mean.
it has similar
Sure.
beats and a bit too much, and I think it doesn't really differentiate from that film. Well, it's a good thing to copy off. I mean, it has a lot of inspiration in that
It
department,
copied the
but
worst parts only.
it's sort of
The weak points.
If it actually
yeah.
copied the plot, it wouldn't be half bad. But
True. But the thing is that like you said, it's an inferior version of that. And I see it as that. To be honest, as a film, I want to see the shows, Loki, Falcon, the Winter Soldier, and WandaVision as like appetizers, with the films as the main course. They're meant to be setting us up for the films, but I was honestly disappointed by this. I found that this film it did not have any juice in it. If you could understand, how I feel. Um, I mean, it sort of plays with you like, oh look, Natasha dies in this instant. I mean, James and I were actually making a count of all the times she dies in the film.
Oh yeah, there are
yeah,
so many moments when she should have just died. She has no powers, nothing. So it's like dead, dead. Oh, she's getting
right.
back up.
Yeah, I mean, there's one where she takes a rocket launcher in a car. I mean, how
Yeah,
do you
she had to
survive?
die at least 8 times in that movie.
That was the
You're
first
like,
one,
okay,
the
she's
rocket
done, she's
launcher.
dead, and it's like, oh,
Yeah,
I guess she's not. That happened like 8 times.
and since we already know how she's going to die thanks to Endgame, everything that she does feels sort of pointless. It's a fruitless show. We know her ultimate outcome, so there's no real there are no stakes for her if you catch the drift. So
Yeah,
you know you could play with her, you could play with the character emotionally and stuff like that, which I have to admit the other characters, except for the villains, do a good job. As I recall, uh, actually, Florence Pugh Pugh does a fantastic job as Yelena, whatever her name is.
Yelena,
Elena.
Yelena,
I guess you
Yelena,
could say.
Yelena.
Yelena Belova.
Yes, Black Widow 2.0. And, she was actually my favorite character. I love, I love you could almost say like a sibling rivalry between the two widows. There's a
Yep.
scene in particular where they're like on a motorbike, and Natasha, who's normally like the calmer of the two of the Avengers, is sort of acting like a teenager, saying, "Oh, I know what I'm doing," with the two sisters just arguing on the bike as they're taking away from, as they're trying to drive away, trying to escape from ongoing Russian
Right.
organization. There's like another moment where Elena is mocking Natasha's habit of posing as well. You know, it's like these small things are what make the film. It's when the film is at its best when it's quiet.
Right.
It's at its worst when there are explosions coming out of its assholes. You know,
Mm.
and it's a bit disappointing in that regard.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
You're, can I just
Let
can
me
I add
know.
a few
Yeah.
comments before you start? Can
Sure.
I just add a few comments before you start? I agree, Jer, and I feel that Florence Pugh as Yelena was one of the best parts of the film. And
mhm.
when your comment about the action bits, yeah, exactly. It's best when it's quiet, and then when it gets loud, it's not the right kind of loud. That's what I can put it as.
I have just.
Um,
Oh, you're going to say something? Were you
no,
about?
I'm
Okay.
finished. Please carry on.
I mean, I can count a few moments in which I was genuinely excited. The first moment Taskmaster appears was actually quite cool. He made one hell of an
Yeah.
entrance.
I think that was the best part of the movie for me. That and the Jason Bourne parts in that city. What was it that they go to?
Bucharest.
Bucharest. Yeah.
Bu- Budapest.
Wait,
Budapest or Bucharest? I think it was Bucharest
I thought it was.
or Budapest. I don't know. Anyway, one of those.
Yeah, we apologize to the city we are wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Right.
Anyway,
I'm not gonna look this up.
Shall I
Carry
take
on.
off with my 2 cents?
Go
go
for
ahead.
it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, my first reaction to this movie was disappointment. I pretty much agree with most of what you guys said. I would say it really shows the worst traits of a Marvel film, which is bad villain, bad plot, just boring exposition backstory scenes, a superhero with not interesting powers, to be honest. Like, she is interesting as a character much more in the Marvel films. Even just the fights she has, the encounters. Even like I didn't feel that we really got into Natasha's head in this movie. She didn't. It didn't feel like it was she owned this movie. This is her movie. It didn't feel like that. It felt very superficial the way they tackled her. And yeah, they do go in the past, like what she used to do, but that's more like that. That was just part of the plot more than like a character exploration per se. And I think the few scenes we have of Natasha talking about her past and everything in the Avengers films are way more interesting and much better done than anything in this one when it comes to exploring her character. I believe like just the acting is better, even the delivery. The scenes are more touching, and it gives you that kind of sense of dread of being, someone who's born owned by the state basically and turned into a killer. Really makes you feel for her. But in this film, I really didn't get that, and it really suffers from the Marvel symptom of having just a terrible villain. And I'm talking about the Harvey Weinstein guy, not
Oh
Taskmaster, by the
yes.
way. Yeah, exactly. We mentioned it because he's just not memorable, right? It's just another throwaway Marvel villain. And I just thought they were getting better at their villains, because I thought, especially Hela, I thought was more interesting than what came before, for example, because she has like a personal connection with Thor and stuff. So that's a better villain. And then Black Panther, even though I didn't like the movie, per se. I thought the villain, at least they tried to make him interesting. And then Thanos, even though he is a bit of a cliche, big bad guy, destroy everything kind of guy, I mean, more or less, he is unique in some ways, even performance wise. But this, they really just fell back to square one. Terrible villain that you're going to forget about. His plans are dumb. His floating base in the sky makes no sense. It's just ludicrous.
And
It's
his
terrible.
defense stinks when you think about it.
Man,
Oh god.
not only his defense, the entire thing stinks. It feels like the script was written in a weekend by someone. They were just like, just write something for Black Widow while we're working on the next whatever Phase 4 shit. That's
But
way
he
more
does
important.
have an infinite resource. Remember that,
This
James.
movie didn't. Yeah, he does have an infinite. The worst
Jesus
line in the
Christ.
entire franchise. They have an infinite resource, which is young girls. That's literally what he says. I'm sorry, guys. That's what he says. Don't arrest me. Don't send out the APB. For me,
You know
right?
what's funny? You know
Literally
what's
quoting
funny?
the movie.
You know what's funny? Everyone
Right.
keeps calling this guy Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
You know what the name of the actor who plays this villain is?
Harvey Weinstein.
Ray Winstone. It sounds
Ray
so
Win-
close to Harvey Weinstein. You cannot make
Yeah.
this up.
Well, I don't want to throw shade on the actor, but
No,
yeah,
no,
I mean,
the
it's just a
actor was-
coincidence. It's a funny coincidence, I guess. But yeah,
Yes,
this
yes.
movie is so disposable, and it's a shame because it starts well, as you said. I really liked the introduction to Taskmaster on the bridge, even though Natasha should have died at least 3 times during that encounter. I liked the apartment scene where she meets her sibling. And what's her name? We said her name 3 times. Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova was good. I agree with that, although I thought her accent was way too forced, and that really threw me off a bit. I thought the accent was poor, could have been better. And although her performance is good, every time she opened her mouth, I couldn't, it just was distracting to me. Because, maybe it's because I know that's not her original accent. I don't know. David Harbour, that's another thing about this movie, because what's important in Marvel films is also comedy, jokes. There's always a good gag. In this film, I don't think it wasn't that funny. Like they tried, there's a okay, yeah, kind of jokes. But I wasn't like, that's a good one. Like jokes from, I don't know, Guardians of the Galaxy or Avengers or whatever, where you have like memorable jokes. David Harbour, he went from being the character Alexei, like potentially a good comedy relief person, to someone that just became annoying by the end because he just wasn't really that funny, and it's just like dad jokes. Well, he's a dad, so he got some slack on that. His character was a bit wasted. He didn't do enough with it. Rachel Weisz, by the way, the mother slash wife of Alexei, was kind of wasted as well. None of the characters were great. This movie just felt like almost like a fan-made Marvel film that's absolutely failed. They just wanted to throw it out there. Let's just release this movie because, I don't know, we wrote it and I shot it, we guess, so just release it. I don't think anyone's proud of making this movie. I doubt anyone's proud of it.
If I could say one thing, I have a feeling that if the fans did make this movie, it would be 10 million times better, because this feels very corporate, very executive.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. In that way, I understand. Yeah. I'll correct
not
myself.
really like
then
a piece
it
of
does.
art.
Yeah, they're just setting up, especially with the post-credit scene. They're just setting up more movies. It feels empty, soulless. It's like I'm playing with an action figure that costs way too much money, and I'm like, it feels plasticky and shit.
I think even by Marvel standards, it's very.
Yeah, it falls into, honestly, like the worst Marvel films, into that category. I would throw it, at least from my opinion, along with Captain Marvel, Iron Man 2, which actually I think Iron Man 2 is actually better than this film. Captain Marvel might be the only one that's worse, but I'm starting to rethink that slowly. But for now, I still think Captain Marvel is the worst Marvel film. But anyway.
We have 100 million more films of Marvel to go, so you might have to readjust that in the future.
So my spiel is done. I don't know if you guys want to cross-examine each other. Is there anything we didn't mention about the film?
No, I think we covered it. I'll add with you that Alexei is a bit of David Harbour's Alexei, aka Red Guardian, is a bit of a letdown as well. And he hypes himself up a lot, and he's supposed to be a super soldier as well, if I'm mistaken, the Russian Captain America, the Soviet Captain America. and you never really see that side of him. He gets a lot of characterization.
Yeah.
There's a lot of acting. There's a lot of dialogue. And there's okay. I want to see him do something, and we never get it.
Yeah.
We get a few seconds of him about to fight, and then we get a few seconds of him getting his ass kicked before the fight gets interrupted, and then nothing. It's
They are definitely setting him up for future movies because
I
of the
hope
whole
so.
Captain America thing, where he's like, "Oh, one day I want to fight Captain America." This is a
he
franchise.
actually states he fought Captain America.
He
Which,
states he fought him, yeah, but okay, he states he fought him, but we all know that what he actually wants to do is see Captain America and maybe I don't know if he'll actually fight. He'll probably be like, "Oh, I'm a big fan" or something. I don't know. But anyway, they're kind of what I feel like is they're setting up a confrontation or at least a meeting between the two where they're gonna meet each other and it's gonna be kind of a funny scene. They don't do that in this movie, although it feels like they're setting up for it. And I think what they're doing is they're doing what shows do. Because since this is a franchise, they're just preparing us. The punchline is coming in another movie. But that comes at the detriment of this film, right? Because you're setting up he's talking about Captain America, this, that, and then nothing ever comes of it. So I think they're planning to do that in a future movie, but it really hurts this film. And not just with him, even with the whole, what's her name? Yelena as well. They set up too much stuff for the future. There's not enough payoff in this film. Anyway.
We'll see some. Yeah, I mean, we got some good performances, but yeah, we'll see what happens with her in the future. She's probably going to appear in Hawkeye, based on what we saw.
One last thing that I need to bring up. That prison escape scene was really weird. I don't know what the hell they tried to do with that scene. So okay, I like how it starts. There's the whole he's arm wrestling some people.
Yes.
That's fine. That was a funny moment actually there. But then the actual plan, I'm like, this is not a plan. You just showed up with a helicopter and you contact him like, hey, meet us, somewhere. And what does Alexei do? He frees himself from the jail without their help. He could have done that at any point. And then they don't even know how to bring him up to the helicopter. He's like, what now? They're like, oh, we don't know. And then there's just everyone's shooting each other and
missing.
Missing. At one point, there's like 30 guards aiming at the helicopter, and like one of them is like, they could have shot all at once. The helicopter would be done. It would be Swiss cheese in 10 seconds. It was so messy and clunky and just bad. And it was embarrassing, honestly. I was just weirded out by that scene. Don't know about anyone else's reaction. It was just weird. It's not following a line, It's not, you don't feel like someone wrote a scene like, okay, this happens, then this happens, and then this pays off in that way, and they use that item to do this. No, it was just random shit. Black Widow just jumping off the helicopter. Oh, I'll kick this guy, and the other guy just like random. It was weird. Anyway, it
was a very weird scene with no thought or plan to it.
I'll give you guys the last word and then we can move on because it's frankly upsetting me thinking about this movie. I just want to forget about it. It's just one of the worst movies I've seen in recent memory.
Jared, do you have any comments? Because I know how we can segue to the next topic.
Okay, I think I might be doing it soon too. So the thing is that this film, feels like it's more connected to a TV series. It's supposed to prep us up for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That is its main existence. That's why it's there. And
I wouldn't go that far. However, I would say that had this film come out when they intended for it to come out, which was May 2020, before Falcon and Winter Soldier, a certain character appearance in Falcon and Winter Soldier would have had more impact.
Right, I didn't finish that show. About this point, it's a good thing you mentioned it again. I'm not even sure if I would react differently to it. I think I would cut it some slack in some areas, but then when it come down to the actual filmmaking and everything, it would be the same. I think the timing is off for this film because we haven't seen a Marvel film in a while.
2
and
years.
then to release this, which is like one of the worst ones they've ever made, is just it just hits even worse.
They just wanted to get it over with. They're like, let's get this out of the way first, and then we'll move on to our proper Phase 4 film, hopefully, Shang-Chi, which comes out in September, I believe.
This is not only a filler movie, but it's a wasted opportunity because I doubt they'll do another Black Widow movie with her. Like what? They're gonna do another flashback movie?
The
Like I don't know.
thing we don't well, we have her successor, and
Yeah,
here's another thing. That so if you guys will allow me to
sure.
segue into our next
Yeah,
topic, I think we're
let's go
done.
ahead.
We have her successor, and James, you mentioned Red Guardian potentially fighting Captain America. Now, when we think of Captain America, we're still thinking of Steve Rogers, but after what happened in Endgame,
Yeah,
Steve Rogers is not gonna have this a fair fight with Red Guardian. However, there might be an alternate for all we know if it's fun to theorize, because now we have confirmation that the multiverse exists, which brings us to our next topic, Loki.
Loki.
Yes, Loki.
Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
are
yeah.
you gonna? Yeah, you wanna
Yeah, I'll
introduce
continue.
this?
I'll continue. So our
Sure.
next topic is Loki. Loki is Marvel's third Disney Plus series, connected to the MCU like everything else, and this centers around the character Loki. However, it's not the Loki who we all know per se, not entirely. This is an alternate universe Loki, a time variant Loki, who escaped with the Tesseract in the Avengers. So this Loki in the show was only featured in Thor and in the Avengers, and had no other character development beyond there, as at the start of the show. So we've all seen Loki. It's six. It's six. The first season is 6 episodes long, and the second season is in development with no release date. There's just it's in development.
Right.
Um, what are your thoughts on it? Do you want to start, James? With James, shall I start with
Sure,
James?
sure.
The show
Okay.
as a whole. What do you think?
Show as a whole. Well, I'll tell you my experience with the show. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't watch any trailers. I don't know how much press was out there, like how many clips were shown. I mean, trailers were out there. I didn't see anything. I barely even saw any posters. But I just like Loki. I think he's one of the most interesting characters of the MCU. Even the actor Tom Hiddleston is really good in this. Um, yeah, the first impression was really positive. I really liked where they were going. I thought it was something different. They really managed to make this feel unique. A good start, make you really curious. A lot of interesting questions. A lot of creative moments. Some good characters are introduced. Owen Wilson. Let me just pull up the IMDb page so I know what I'm talking about. I don't want to miss anything out. Yeah, Owen Wilson's character was good. I mean, everyone can pretty much agree. Then we have uh, shall we just go into spoilers? I don't know how many spoilers. Let me
Yeah.
do this part with no spoilers, and then we can get into it when it's maybe you guys' turn. I'll keep it light.
Okay.
So this series, around the middle way, I was still curious, but then it came to a point where I'm like, okay, there are so many questions, and they're piling up. These questions keep piling up, and I'm like, are they actually going to pay off? Because at the time, now we talked about this in person. Uh, at the time, I thought it was going to be one season, right? Because Falcon Winter Soldier was a one-off season. WandaVision was the same. Loki, I think they only said season 2 is coming out when the show was already airing or right at the end. From what I know, the official confirmation was only at the end of the episode or the day the last episode came out. That was when the official confirmation came out. There might have been rumors, I don't know, but at least that's when I knew season 2 was confirmed. When the post-credit scene, I think it was, yeah, I think it's in the post-credit scene where it confirms there's a season 2 in the very last episode. So what you get is a handful of episodes where it throws all these questions at you, and you're hoping to get some information by the end. And what you get is just a confirmation that everything everyone's been talking about is basically that nothing is different than what you already knew watching the show. I'm trying not to spoil too much, but I'm just saying that it doesn't subvert your expectations in any way. By the last episode, you're just like, at least I was. This is my reaction. There's this character in the last episode that kind of explains everything, and my reaction was, well, yeah, we kind of already know this. Maybe we know now exactly like who's behind it. We know more precisely, okay, this looks like that, this looks like that. But it's no different than the very initial explanation that we got. You know what I mean? There was no twist, there was no reveals, and it was just more setup. Okay, it's set up for another character who we know is going to be a bad guy in future movies, probably for the whole Phase 4. For as far as we know, it's probably going to be the big bad guy, like Thanos was for Phase 3, I guess. So for me, it just fell down at the end, where it's like, oh, it's just more setup, and it's a shame because it could have been this really good contained kind of mind-bending, cerebral, a bit like Inception-like, if you will, Tenet-like sci-fi adventure. That could have had an explosive ending with genuine reveals, genuine twists, a genuine subversion of expectation. But what you get is just more setup. Oh, there's going to be cool stuff down the line. You get a promise that things are going to be cool down the line. I mean, I'll watch season 2 because I'm hoping. I don't know how many seasons it's going to go on for, but I still trust that there's going to be something at the end of this story that's going to pay off, because Marvel are quite smart when it comes to plots. Like they try to do things differently a bit. So I'm still curious, but definitely my rating went down in the last episode. It went from being something really good and fun, creative, to I hope this pays off, but this is still good, to it just didn't pay off for me. Boom, down. So it's really mixed overall, my opinion on it. I mean, if you're a Marvel fan, you should watch it because it's better than Falcon Winter Soldier. Like,
Yes.
I haven't finished that show, so I don't know if it becomes amazing in the last 2 episodes, but I was really unimpressed. And I thought that was really disposable. And I still cannot fathom how you can have a successor to Captain America who's not Super Soldier. But anyway, that's my spiel on Loki. And you guys can take it from here.
All right. Jer, do you want to go next or shall I?
I
How do you
think it's
feel?
best if you go for this one.
Okay. Loki. So, my experience. I've never really been a fan of Loki. Tom Hiddleston portrays him decently, but my problem was not really how he's portrayed, more like how he's written. I find him to be a bit of an. I find Loki to be a bit of an overrated character, and the Marvel films have never really made full use of him, like as a true like god of mischief type character. I don't see enough to be convinced. Seems more like he gets by on charm and nothing else. So going into Loki, I was a bit pessimistic. And first, it's 6 episodes long. And first 3 episodes, I wasn't too impressed because those were a lot of setup for the show itself, not really the MCU, and they felt really just a bit too low budget for my case, and lots of setup, not really much happening. And again, Loki being an absolute chump sometimes, especially in the second episode, where he gets beaten up by a gets beaten up by a fat human, and he's a god or an
Yeah,
alien.
he's super nerfed.
Oh my god, he uses telekinesis to get a Roomba, and that's it. Anyway, then you actually see him doing cool things from the third episode on. Then midway through, after the third episode, things get more interesting. And I was intrigued, and I genuinely enjoyed the fourth and fifth. Sixth, I was a bit mixed as well. And while I love that this film it introduces the idea of the time variance authority and trying to prevent the multiverse, and then the multiverse itself, I think it's really cool. I'm a bit with James in that it's spent mostly on setup. I will say that its second half is leagues better than its first. After it gets all the setup out of the way, things actually get interesting and a bit less.
Right.
And it looks better as well. The first 3 episodes, especially no, the first 2 reeked of low budget. Like they were really trying to save money.
Really?
The
I thought the
same
opposite.
the same
Anyway.
gray hallways. I don't know. I enjoyed the little references it makes to Marvel comics and all things like that, such as this. I had a good chuckle when I saw the Thanos copter. A fun visual gag. As for the end, I knew that a second season was in development, so I wasn't expecting. I mean, with Marvel, you can never expect full closure.
It's
Like even
never
with a
gonna end.
yeah,
It's
like
never
even with
gonna end.
self-contained shows like WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which are not going to have a second season as far as we know today. Although there was closure, they're setting up more. But with Loki, I was expecting some kind of cliffhanger, and that's what I got. So I wasn't really
Right.
surprised. Um, and it does introduce the who we think might be the big bad for the next crossover movie villain, and I wasn't too impressed with his characterization. I found him kind of annoying. Every time he spoke, I just got irritated. I'm like, oh my god, it's the same trope: the all-powerful guy who cannot be killed unless he wants to be, who's talking in
Yeah.
riddles and making jokes. It gets off. It's a pet peeve of mine. This kind
Right.
of impish, sort of playful type of character. I don't know. Maybe it was something in his voice. It just gets on. It
No,
just
I understand where you're coming
yeah.
from.
But I am intrigued about the setup, and it does set. And so, and with the way it ends, I mean, can we get into spoilers now? Can we just drop a big
Okay,
bomb
spoiler
on this?
warning. Spoiler warning. Skip like
A
10 minutes.
huge bomb. Loki sets up Kang the Conqueror as the next potential Marvel villain, and something to. And if my analysis is correct, no analysis. I mean, this is what he said. There are going to be many of these, many Kangs from alternate timelines. So this is a villain who essentially cannot die. We're going to be seeing, I think, Jonathan Majors, the actor, multiple times.
Can I
Hopefully,
interject?
putting it. Yeah.
One
What?
second. If, you said he cannot die because there's infinite versions of him. What about everyone else?
That's why I
I'll
mentioned
come to
Captain
that later.
America.
I'll come to that later.
That's why I mentioned Captain America before. That's what I mentioned Scarlett
Right.
Johansson before. Tony Stark is dead. Robert
Yeah.
Downey Jr. can come back.
Let's get back to that after each of our turns because that's
Okay,
interesting.
so anyway, with the multiverse, you can do anything. I mean, it's being set up for the next Spider-Man film, for the next Doctor Strange movie. Loki is very much connected, directly or not, to these movies. I can already tell. And it's connected to WandaVision to some degree as well. There are some theories that the climax of WandaVision coincides with the climax of Loki. It's a fun theory, which Marvel hasn't confirmed, but it's fun, I guess. Um, so I see where they're going with this. And even Ant-Man 3, there's a connection to that as well. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which comes out in like 2.5 years, or no, or whatever, 2 years.
Right.
I lost my train of thought a little bit. So I'm a bit of a mix. Loki was a bit of a mixed bag for me, but hopefully, with all the setup out of the way, season 2 will be better. I have a feeling season
They're
2
also changing directors, so that might help.
that might help as well, and
Yeah.
maybe a bit more budget, just a little bit more, and actually, just a little bit more. I enjoyed some of the supporting characters, like Owen Wilson as Mobius was great. I enjoyed what's her name? Come on, come on, come on. Wikipedia, don't think me. Sophia Di Martino's portrayal of Sylvie. I enjoyed her for the most part. Found her just
Yeah.
a little bit
That was an
too,
awkward romance.
what to call it. Sometimes I found Sylvie to be a little bit too single-minded. But then when you have those moments of like breed where there's characterization, it's all right. This is why I like these shows in a way. I like that Marvel's doing these shows because it gives us more time to get to know everyone. And like Wanda, like Vision, like Sam Wilson, like Bucky Barnes, and now like Loki. It's a good idea,
Yeah.
and I imagine they're going to do more like that. They're going to make us care or about characters who we didn't really care about. Which brings me to how I started with this. Because at the beginning of Loki, I wasn't really into Loki. I found him, but now this show has helped me warm up to him a little bit.
All
This
right.
time variant version of him. I just hope that I just hope that now that all this bloody setup is out of the way, we can have a bit more of a focused story next time.
It's a lot of
So that's
setup.
my 2 cents.
6
Yeah.
hours of setup.
Yes, and for all we know, the next season will be more setup. So
Another 6 hours of setup.
wouldn't be surprised. But now,
Absolutely
yeah,
not.
yeah, we'll see. But we'll see. But I enjoy the cameos. I enjoy the alternate timelines, and with alternate timelines, you can have a lot of fun. And I think Loki can also be interpreted. If I can ramble on a little bit longer, I think Loki can also be connected. Perhaps we don't know yet because it hasn't come out yet. To Marvel's What If, which is an alternate universe kind of show, an anthology series, which will show what if something in the Marvel films was different,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
My God.
So you could interpret all those splits in the timeline and the climax, all those what do you call them? What do you call them? There's a word for it I can't remember. But everything when everything is just splitting,
Yeah,
you
yeah. I
can
know what you
interpret
mean.
those as what if episodes
Yeah.
in the making.
Right.
So conclusion, mixed bag, but I'm a bit more forgiving.
Okay. Jeremy, what's your thoughts? You just finished it. Did you finish the last episode today? Was it
Yeah,
or yesterday?
yes.
Today. Okay.
I
Literally
watched the rest.
30 minutes. Okay, 30 minutes before this podcast.
Right.
Jesus,
So
that's
I'm quite
Okay.
dedication,
prepared.
Jer.
Have we
Kudos for catching up.
influenced? Have we influenced your opinion since we talked first?
Okay, so I like to see, I see this series as more of like a psychological analysis of the character of Loki.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, the thing is that But I'm kind of with Dave on my introduction of Loki. I kind of find him a bit too narcissistic for my liking as a character, and to have an entire series of him, yeah, sort of pushed a
Yeah.
bit.
I think the
I,
point is that he's a bit of an anti-hero, right?
yeah, not even I say anti-villain. He's close
Okay.
to that.
Right.
Yeah, he doesn't he does things mainly for himself. He does go he serves the big bads. I mean, he served freaking Thanos at one point.
Right. Yeah.
But you get to see that here in this series, he actually looks at this stuff. It's actually it's like the series shows him what he is. It tells
Hmm.
even it starts him off on a road on a track to how he sees himself and how he becomes by the end of it. There's a hero's journey to him, something in which it caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to see a character who, well, tried to destroy New York actually warm up. You know, I
Right.
mean,
Huh.
he is a liar, a thief, and by the end of it, he actually comes to terms with his character. This is like the most growth I've seen from a single Marvel character in a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Um,
I didn't think of it like that. I didn't
I,
think of that part actually. Yeah.
well,
I
I thought of
mean,
it. I thought that was gonna be obvious because Loki has always been a bit more on the villain side throughout the franchise, and I think they had to make him likable, or else you would just wouldn't care, and you just want him to die. So you kind of have to do that. But yeah, I get your point.
the thing is that uh, they're kind of right about Loki's survivability. He's like a cockroach. He keeps coming back somehow.
Yeah.
Even
And
after Thanos snaps his neck, we still get him back.
yeah, and well, the thing is, he sees this. He knows his fate. He sees all the things he's done wrong in his lifetime.
Mm.
And well, it's sort of like he wants to make a difference. He really tries. There are moments where he's surrounded by other characters, other, I guess, variants of himself.
Yeah.
Sylvie, played by Sofia Di Martino, for example,
Yeah.
she he's around her for more or less, I'd say a good 4/5 of the series,
Hmm.
and you get to see these characteristics shine between the two of them. You get to hear the banter between the two characters. At one point, Loki can't even stand himself. He's actually in a room filled with himself.
Yeah.
He wants to leave. It's obnoxious to him. And when you see a character who actually admits it, that these guys are assholes.
Hmm.
There's no doubting it. And many times in the series, he's put in his place. It's something. All these things, it actually makes this like a very good analysis of him.
Yeah. It's
It,
very introspective.
yeah, it's a good introspective of the character. Now, as a overall setting, I kind of think of this as Marvel's Doctor Who,
Yeah. Okay.
where Loki is just like traveling
Mhm.
from time to time. Sort of it's sort of like he's just on the freeway of time, just kicking back, seeing all these different moments and well blowing them up.
What did you think of the plot and like the ending and how it wrapped up? How it didn't wrap up? What did
Um,
you think about that
okay,
aspect?
now it's funny because Loki's, well, I guess you could say the greatest villain for the character is a guy that talks more than him,
Right.
and generally speaking, it's Loki actually being disgusted at a person who, who's basically him in character wise, just like mouthing
Right.
off about, oh, if you kill me, this will happen. Oh my, there's a plan within a plan, usual stuff, you know.
I have a burning question when you're done. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
So it's kind of like you seeing this the character evolution towards the end, and it comes out like with three different answers of what he can do. Um, and honestly, I thought that was smart because, to be honest, I can't really imagine Loki as a fighting character, as a guy who just goes into a battle, swords out like Thor, Iron Man, and all the others. I thought this would be a diplomatic kind of ending. I thought it would be spent more sitting down and talking, where they do a lot of it, 40 freaking minutes of it.
Yeah.
Um, but it fits the character. It fits that he will be the one to just sit down and talk and more or less decide the fate of the universe, of the multiverse.
Yeah.
Through diplomacy and stuff. That is Loki in the long run. Um, and as for the end, I I kind of was expecting it, but I also see that the character that who might or may not become Kang has
It's gonna be Kang.
it probably is, but the character also is known for other roles in the Marvel universe. He's actually known to be another Iron Man as well before even becoming Kang. So we could be seeing
Probably.
another Iron Man as
Right.
well. So
Interesting. In fact, if I can I cut you off for a sec?
go ahead.
I don't know why, but you just made me think that Marvel are doing a series called Armor War, not Armor Wars, Iron Heart. I wonder if that might tie in, or Armor Wars, or anyway, just thinking out loud. Carry on, Jer.
So generally speaking, it sort of it opens the floodgates to all the possibilities. I mean, that's also Marvel's way of saying, hey, we don't need to keep hiring, keep going on with certain
Yeah,
contracts.
that's a smart way getting around
I
that.
mean, instead of hiring an actor for 6 films, you can have like a whole barrage of Captain Americas, some of
Right.
which of different races and creeds. You can get even the bizarre ones. If you want Spider Ham, go ahead.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a whole variety. You might get different. You might get the X-Men. This might be a way how to enter them into the universe. It might be a way to introduce the Fantastic Four. I mean, I see this as like a way of basically expanding their creativity.
Hmm.
And basically, Marvel just made the first steps to do so.
Yeah. I
Interesting.
I think what you just said has actually backfired massively on Marvel and on the whole franchise in a negative way, which is that at this point, especially after Loki, none of the fucking Marvel universe makes any sense. Nothing makes any sense anymore because first of all, in Endgame, the fact that they invented time travel already kind of cancels out anything that can happen in the entire universe because you can just go back in time and fix it. And yeah, so according to the rules in Endgame, it kind of makes everything pointless.
I think in
Um,
Loki, though, sorry to cut you off. I think in
yeah,
Loki, they address that, and apparently, if I remember
when?
correctly, some point in Loki they
They
address
did.
the Avenger. They address the Avengers altering the timeline, and apparently it was meant to happen.
Yeah, it was meant to
No one
happen.
cared.
No, and
No, it
then
was
you,
meant to happen. They let it. It
yeah, no,
had
no,
to
but
happen like that.
I, to add to that, Loki introduces the time TVA, time variation variant authority or whatever, um, which introduces the concept of this infinite multiverse craziness. which in turn makes it exponentially more chaotic. So at this point in time, in this universe, anything can exist at any point. All characters are alive and dead simultaneously. Everything we've seen up to this point is pointless because it's just one universe out of the infinite multiverses. Now you could still make it interesting in the sense that yeah, we're following this one universe because it's the more interesting and it's what we're seeing, so we're automatically curious because we don't know what's happening in the other universes, right? But at the same time, it makes anything possible. They just added so many variables. The time variation authority being able to intervene at any point in any timeline in any universe. You have time travel. You have infinity stones that can change everything, at least in their reality. And combining these together, just doesn't glue together anymore. And this is you can ignore what I'm saying if you just kind of put on blinders and just watch whatever Marvel's putting out and following that story. And that is the way to go. Like that's what they're doing, right? We're just seeing a narrow vision of the entire franchise, right? Because you can't show everything that's happening in every universe. So it's still interesting to watch as a franchise, but from now on, like all bets are off and anything is possible. That's what I'm trying to say. So I think whatever happens is kind of pointless in a way. If that makes sense. Anyway, but that's kind of a point of view. You can not give a shit about this, or you can.
I think
It's something that you need to kind of ignore, I think, though. But it's a big elephant in the room, I think, at this point.
If I can address you, James, I
Yeah.
think you brought up some interesting points. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing because we're still at the beginning. We don't know how this is going to go.
Yeah, true.
And I don't know if for all we know, the multiverse could be with us with more of the MCU for a really long time. This is only phase 4.
Yeah.
And for all we know, it could carry on after Kang is eventually defeated. Or Kang is resolved, let's say, not defeated.
Right.
In case they decide to keep him around. Or they might find some hackneyed way to bring everything back together.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, I'm sure
It's too early
they're
to
going to keep
tell.
it interesting, but I'm just saying this thing is going to loom over the franchise for the foreseeable future. Like, there's no way of turning back on this. They've opened the can of worms of time travel and multiverse. I mean, already there probably doesn't exist. There's maybe only 2 or 3 movies about multiverses and 2 or 3 movies about time travel that make sense, and all the others don't. So if you combine multiverse and time travel, it just makes it exponentially more complicated. There's no way any team of writers can keep everything consistent. It's just ridiculously complicated. Not even a supercomputer can follow everything.
I mean, when you think of it like that, yeah, it can be hard, especially when you only have a couple of hours per film, and films take months to make, and then they take longer to come out. So, if this were a monthly comic series or a weekly series, it would be easier, and they could release multiple at the same time. But with multiple writers, you won't require actors. You just need artists and writers. There are a lot. The logistics are heavy.
What I'm saying, that Marvel has to rely on people not scrutinizing their universe too much from now on.
Because already have to rely on people watching everything as well.
Well, that's for sure. I have one question about Loki, a very specific question. It's a spoilery question, so again, people skip this part if you don't want to hear it.
Yeah,
we're beyond that now.
Very quick question, and then we can move in probably the next topic, and then you can give your last words, and then we move on to the next topic. So this thing doesn't make sense to me. So you have these Time Lords. So you have the TVA. It exists to keep one timeline in place and to not allow one universe in place and to not allow the universe to split into a multiverse, or else there will be a multiverse war. Okay? That's the premise of the TVA, right? Okay, and the people, at least from the beginning, what you're told is the people who are overseeing this operation are the Time Lords, and they have the best interest of this one universe in mind, and they're trying not to make chaos happen by releasing other multiverses, right? Okay. One of the last episodes, you find out, the Time Lords are not who you thought they are. They are controlled by someone. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting, even though I suspected it. But then you get confirmation. They're just puppets. And you're thinking, puppets for what? There must be a big conspiracy behind it. What is behind the conspiracy? A guy who is overseeing the one sacred timeline, trying to not allow it turn into a multiverse. What was the point of the Time Lords? Explain that. Answer that question.
I think I
If they
can.
both had the same goals, and they both assumedly have the same powers, because it's kind of like the Time Lords were like the secretary to the other guy. What's his name? His official name.
He who remains.
He who remains. They're kind of like his secretary, but
I have a theory. Jer has
what
a
was the
theory.
point? Tell me.
I have one.
Answer that question.
You want me to go first?
Jer. I have go first, and then I have a theory.
I honestly think they're a buffer. They
A
are
buffer.
basic. Yeah. So and also to keep everyone in line.
But he's already keeping everyone in line. What does he need? Puppets.
He is, but when you see it from, I guess, from a human's perspective, if you see some grand, mighty overlords who plot time,
Right.
be the ones who are, I guess, in charge.
You mean like a
You know,
propaganda thing?
Yeah, it's sort of like a propaganda
Yeah.
thing. And also, the second thing is, if someone comes to kill you, they have to go through them.
But they're puppets.
They're puppets.
They couldn't even
but they
move.
are
So if
the
someone even
puppets.
tried to attack them, they would have destroyed them anyway.
Yes, but at least you'll be alert about this. I mean, they're like the first level before they get to you. I mean, if it's
But-
you there, someone will just kill you.
It kind of, to me, it sounds like too much work. Like there was no reason for this to happen, because once the other TVA people find out that, a few of them find out that the Time Lords aren't real, they start questioning what they're doing this for, especially Mobius. But everything he believed was actually still true. You know, the only thing that wasn't real is the Time Lords, but everything else remains the same. Like the point is the same. There was no conspiracy. So you're just risking to make your own TVA agents go against you, thinking there's a conspiracy when there actually isn't. You could have just been honest with them, or you could just have security. Since you're the master of the universe, why don't you have just security? No one could get to you anyway. You don't need the time. But my point is, it seems too convoluted. It seems to me they just put them there as just a twisty moment. They're just there for that twist moment.
I could see what you mean. I
I
say
have
the
yeah.
I say the biggest thing that sort of makes me question it is sort of like, why don't you just tell them the variants? Why do you have to send I guess your new variants out to die? You know, why do you do that? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you recruit if every variant you meet is just, I guess, purged, or what is it? Purged, pruned.
Pruned.
Yeah. How do you do this? What is the recruitment system like over there? I mean,
I don't know. There's just some things don't make sense to me.
and
I'll
to
give you guys the
which-
last word, because we're almost at an hour mark, and I would say maybe we'll move the next topic to the next podcast because it's already an hour.
Okay. I'm fine with
It's
that.
probably better. Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Uh,
If I can just give a theory
Sure.
as to why the timekeepers were even created. I'm with Jer. It's a buffer. Probably now you're thinking, yeah, your questions aren't invalid, James. Why not just be honest? They could have, and you could have just written it so that the variants would have been like, yeah, we're variants, we're okay with that.
Yeah.
It might have given them an existential issue. The existential twist that they're not who they are, not who they think.
Yeah. But the thing is,
It's a cool twist.
it's not an actual twist, because everything they've been told was actually true anyway.
My issue is more like the way the twist was dropped, that they are variants. When you first hear it, you're like, the way it's delivered, it's very offhanded comment by Sylvie, if I recall. Then next episode, when Loki tells Mobius, it actually has impact, even though we already knew. But with regards to the timekeepers, I think He Who Remains created them as a buffer. When they look like gods, you tend to question them less instead of just one guy. I don't think he really did it for his own protection, because he cannot be killed and he has this foresight which allowed, up until a specific point in time. So I think he did it just to create these divine beings which people are more likely to blindly follow in a way.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
And if he was honest, and told people that his death would unleash infinite evil versions of himself. Eventually, somebody would
Right.
get curious, as you know, or they would say like, "I bet you he's the evil one," and the infinite versions. You know, it's a sort of Adam and Eve apple thing. Why shouldn't
Right.
I? You know, I'm gonna do it now. You know, so I think by staying completely anonymous, he created. You know, he protected himself. He made things more
Yeah.
compartmentalized, more like structured. You know, it's convenient in that
Okay,
way.
I'll give you that one then.
Yeah, and he gets to
But
sit in his big dusty mansion doing nothing. You
but
know.
yeah, but
Yeah.
still, I think it's a bit of a stretch still.
But
Honestly,
your
but
questions aren't invalid, honestly. You
right.
made you I didn't think about it until you asked,
To me,
you
it
know?
feels like more like a plot device rather than something that makes sense in the universe itself. To a certain
Mhm.
degree, even though what you said is true and it's valid, it it, it just feels it stinks of just script writing rather than actually part of the universe. This whole thing
Okay.
about the Time Lords, I don't know. It was kind
It
of a
could have been done
twist that doesn't
better.
go anywhere. Yeah, it could
It
have been
could have
done
been
better.
done. It's very Wizard of Oz in a way. It's
Yeah,
like man behind
but
the curtain,
yeah, but the
except
thing
he is
is, in
powerful.
the yeah, exactly. In the Wizard of Oz, it's a guy who actually isn't powerful, but here he is. So it's kind of like
Mhm.
a twist that then you forget about because everything. If if there weren't any Time Lords, nothing would have changed in this series. If it was just straight up him, the plot could have been exactly the same. You know,
It was I
there are
think it
valid
was for the
concerns, but
sake
yeah,
I think it was for the sake of propaganda as well, like you said. Again, the
yeah.
timekeepers, you have these three divine
Yeah, but I
beings,
mean,
and it's the
they could
rule
have
of
just
three.
written about this TVA, like understanding this Kang, who he remains guy, and just being on his side and agreeing with him. You know, they could have written it that way. The Time Lords,
They
they
could
feel
have.
like that's why I mean it feels like a plot device. It's just thrown in there as something that it's like, ooh, Time Lords, and then they die, and it's a twist, and oh, there's someone else behind this, and then it turns out that it's not really a twist because everything you knew up to this point is true anyway.
You're not
So
wrong.
it
I
can't.
think yeah,
I don't
with
know.
enough
I'm
with it, yeah.
spending a lot of
I
time
mean,
talking about this, but it's really bugging me.
I
it's not an invalid point. I mean, had you written it that way, it could have worked. I'm just answering your question and
Yeah.
justifying what we got and trying to justify what we got. Yeah, but you're not wrong. They could have written it like that as well, and
No,
it could
no,
have
you
been the
did
same. We could have
justify
had the
it.
same ending. Hmm?
You did justify it, but even the whole how it tries to reveal everything in the last episode, that's just a continuation of this kind of fake promise that the series has of giving you something grand at the end, because it does have that feeling. Oh, there's something big behind this, but as I said before, what you get in the end is what you already knew at the beginning. You just didn't see the face of who was behind it, and maybe you didn't know a couple of details, but it wasn't a big reveal. Like everything the guy says in the last episode, you assumed already from the first one. You know what I mean? And then the Time Lords is just like a continuation of that, where it's like, oh, Time Lords, and then when you actually find out everything behind it, like, oh, okay, well, that was kind of pointless because there's no twist really. So it just, I don't know, it wasn't a great aspect. I think it was wasted, and it could have been dealt with better. Anyway, if you guys want to give the last word, and then we'll wrap this up.
Um, yeah,
If you
I'm a
have any
bit more
other
for.
point to bring up quickly, I don't know.
No, I'm pretty covered. I mean, I'm a bit more forgiving of the show.
Okay, Loki,
But
definitely very very interesting to talk about, even though it's
I,
mixed.
definitely.
I honestly liked it. Just stating from a fact. No, it's. I
Oh,
think
generally,
it's.
yeah. No, go ahead.
I think it's so out there when compared to all the other Marvel stuff. It's sort of it's
Mm,
unique in its way,
agreed.
and and I think it's one of those shows which it tries to play itself as smart, but then falls into its own little bucket of worms in the end.
Yeah.
But it has it like I said, it's basically it's not really about the environment that Loki is in. It's mainly about Loki himself because
Hmm.
everyone there is just there to emphasize the character. It's just there to just bring him out more. Um, I mean, from what I've seen, the main villain, like what we said, he's afraid of himself. He's afraid of what his outcomes can be. Loki in general does something.
I don't even know if I'd call him a villain, to be honest. I actually
Huh?
was on his side. I'm like, what he says makes total sense.
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
if someone had to come up to you and tell you, listen, I control all time and space. You know, I basically make sure everything goes on perfectly. I've been doing
right.
this for
I'd be like, thank
eons.
you.
I mean, good job, dude.
I'd be like, cheers, bro.
We can have a drink to that.
Thanks for not letting other people tear my universe into pieces and
No, thank you for
end
not,
existence.
thank you for not having an argument with yourself. Basically, it
Right,
is.
yeah.
Uh,
Ah,
a- and basically, this guy, it here's what held everything together. You know, I think with it's like he opened Pandora's box. You know,
yeah.
it's all this stuff, and whether or not Marvel can add all this stuff, add all these different timelines and stuff to the story, is sort of anyone's guess.
It's gonna be
I
a
mean,
clusterfuck. that's
they
that's
have you
We'll
my
see
have you
how it
seen?
turns.
concerns.
We'll see how it turns out. We'll see how it turns
Yeah.
out. But for all you know,
If
we could be right. What I
if
like
you
is
ever,
that we're seeing. Oh, sorry, you're still talking, Jared.
I
How?
was yeah, sorry. If you ever read Marvel's comics, you know that everything is tangled up. I mean, seriously, but somehow they do this bullshit every
Yeah, I mean
single
we're
comic
following
series.
a slither, right? A narrow slither of what's
Yes,
happening. So that
I
and
mean,
that is the most important one because it's everything that's happening in that slither is the most important things that happen in all the multiverses. For example, the
yes,
whole TVA thing, the Thanos time travel stuff. Okay, maybe not that, but let's say the TVA thing mainly is something that only happens to the slither. So that's why it makes this important, even though there's infinite multiverses. This is the one to follow because the important things happen in this one. But there's still the concern that anything can happen at any time once you allow multiverses and time travel. Like, what else can you? They're gonna add more things maybe in the future. Like, I don't know.
now Marvel
I
have a
can't come up with
tendency.
anything else to be honest. Oh,
Now
We'll see how it turns out. I'm curious.
Marvel has a tendency on, at least with their comics, of gradually raising the stakes until it reaches a point of
I
stupidity,
I think the
and then
stakes
they pop
actually have been
bubble.
reduced, in my opinion,
That's what I mean.
because because if a character dies, now there's a multiverse version of them. While before there was just that one character.
That's right.
Right? So if they die, you're like, oh, there's like infinite versions of that person. The one can just pop out of a portal at any time.
But
Like you made that possible, so I don't give a shit who dies. It
here's a
does have no
question.
impact. What?
Here's a question. If I know we've cared about the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man.
Yeah.
I mean, if I don't know, Will Smith takes up the road. I know
No,
someone like
but there's
that.
another Robert Downey Jr. in another universe. That's my
Yeah,
point.
but they're not
He's
gonna hire
alive.
him.
He's alive. And by
I
the
mean,
way, I'm sure there's millions of universes where Thanos won.
yeah,
So everything they did is kind of pointless.
but
About 14 million.
Yeah.
yeah,
So you know what I
actually,
mean? Like everything kind of feels like you're just looking at ants, just like carrying bits of leaves and food around. You're like, yeah, okay.
We'll see how it develops.
So
Maybe they'll find that. Maybe they'll play it straight, like you're saying, or maybe they'll no. Maybe they'll play it simple. Maybe they'll play it complicated, or maybe they'll surprise us. We
yeah.
don't know.
Well, yeah. My point is, I'm sure they have a plan and everything. It's Marvel. It's not DC. So they have a plan. They know where they're going. They're confident. There's comics and stuff. So I'm sure it's going to be good. Generally, it's as it's been going now. It's fairly well. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, the whole thing, it's going very well, I would say. Um, but I'm just talking. I'm saying these problems are kind of a lingering thing that they've inserted that I don't think are going to be addressed. Are kind of impossible to address, just writing wise. But they're just something that I brought up. But honestly, I ignore it mostly, but it's still there. Shall we start wrapping? Because
yeah,
Yeah, we can wrap it up.
it's getting long. If anyone has some final statements,
I
no.
am pretty okay. I'm pretty okay. You want to close us out, James? Thank the
Okay, yeah, I
folks at
will. I
home
will
for
close
tuning
this
in.
out. Yeah, thank you if you heard us ramble until now. Hopefully, I haven't fallen to sleep, but I don't blame you if you have. For next time, I guess Quiet Place 2, we're going to move it to next time. We're going to talk about other juicy topics and other movies that come out recently. You can probably guess which ones, the more popular ones.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
won't say them now because we're not sure yet. But yeah, stay tuned for our next episode coming out soon. And thank you for watching and see you next time. And don't forget to visit popcornperspective.com. Ciao, ciao.